everybody. Welcome once again to a late edition of the ABA's What's This Bird Live. We are excited to be here. I am joined by my colleague, Ted Floyd, and I want to apologize right off the bat for our late start. We are coming in about 20 minutes late today because Greg is not with us, and Greg usually does the kind of back end production stuff while we're doing this, and the software that we use on my computer was not updated, and I was having a lot of issues making things work, including the photos of the birds, which I sort of required for this for this thing. So what we've got kind of a workaround here, kind of a Band-Aid and rubber band and bubblegum sort of fix. Greg is actually with us. He's in the back doing the back channel production stuff, but it's still Ted and no audio. They're saying no audio or video. It looks like it's coming in okay for me. Let us know in the comments if everything is working. I can hear myself. Ted, can I hear you? How are you, Ted?
I'm doing fine. Hello, Nate. I hear you loud and clear and normal too, I guess I would say.
That's good. Yes. Hello to everybody who is out there. We are going to talk about birds. I feel like we should just go ahead and jump right into it because we're running a little bit late. We'll wait just a little bit, maybe another minute or so for people to arrive who might be interested in joining us. Hi to all our folks on Facebook and YouTube. We are cutting out Twitter and Twitch today. No good for the tease. Ted, how's summer in Colorado? We're midsummer here.
Yeah, it really has sort of become summer. We had a cooler period the past couple of days, but I think we're into a long hot spell coming up now. So as we start a new fiscal year today, I guess we also are sort of starting the summer doldrums here in Colorado. Yeah. On a bird note, I heard a blue grosbeak singing this morning, and they're so odd in Colorado. They move around, and they often begin second broods at some point. So it's often typical not to get your first blue grosbeak of the year in a particular site until this time of the year. So it was my first blue grosbeak of the year at my local patch.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Even though they've been back for well over a month elsewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, I run some breeding bird surveys here in the western Piedmont of North Carolina, and one up just across the border in Virginia. And blue grosbeak is consistently one of my most common birds, which is always a nice thing to have when you've got blue grosbeaks on your breeding bird survey at a number of different stops. This year seems especially good for them. I don't know if that's the sort of thing that you notice in Colorado, but on my breeding bird survey routes, we had more blue grosbeaks than we've had in a very long. Well, I've been running for like 7 years, so more in that period, half a decade.
They're more marginal here, I think, than they are in North Carolina.
Yeah, it's one of our more common kind of pasture birds, along with indigo buntings and things of that nature. Anyway, Greg, thanks so much for running the back channel stuff. If y'all want to say hi to Greg. I don't know if he's following along on Facebook. He might not be. He's totally fixed on the OBS software side of things. But we're excited to talk birds. So what we usually do here in this spot is the ABA runs a Facebook group called What's This Bird. It is our kind of our crowdsourced bird identification community, and that means people post photos of birds that they see in their yards out on the field, and we identify them for them. And what we usually get are some, interesting bird identification questions, interesting angles, interesting, topics that we can talk about here. And what we do in this spot every couple of weeks is to grab them and pull a few of them up and talk about them with a little more detail. Usually it's Greg that is my partner here. It's Ted today. A little more geographic variation. But let's do it. Let's pull up some bird photos that we've seen and What's This Bird, and let's talk through them. Ted, does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
I have a stadium echo, Dave Irons says.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if let me pull up and see if I can. Oh yeah. Oh, I hear it. I've got some double whammy going on, Greg. I don't know if you're getting some feedback on me a little bit.
Sound good to me, Nate.
Anyway, all right. We'll just go forward, and Greg will deal with it as he is. If you have any questions, Ted and I are happy to talk about birds kind of more generally, not just the ones that we work on here. Please please throw them into the comments and we'll tackle them. Susan Nelson notes she's got a summer tanager singing its head off on yesterday evening before sunset. Another great bird. Another bird I get on my breeding bird surveys with some regularity. And Stephen Williams says he spent a couple days in Maine to see the Atlantic puffin. On the road to Missouri, suggestions on birds to get in Missouri in the heat of summer. Well, it just so happens that I grew up in Missouri, in the southwest part in the Ozarks. And if you're down that way, check eBird and look for painted buntings and things of that nature. It's a good bird to find down in that part of the country.
On an obscure note, I was just in Maine myself.
That's right.
Right. But what I was really thinking about there was you mentioned Missouri. So the place where I've seen more red-spotted admirals or red-spotted purples, that's a butterfly, by the way, than anywhere else on Earth is Missouri. And it's the same species. Do you know about this, Nate? In Maine, they're utterly different looking. They look like, right. It's so cool. There's a
decline. It's a declinal variation.
So what we were talking about is like,
I don't know.
No,
they're very different.
Just leave it at they're very different. It is so genetically and evolutionarily and just almost philosophically complex. But the question we were wondering is like, so where do the red-spotted purples, red-spotted admirals, whatever, stop looking like red-spotted purples and start looking like those white-winged whatever the white and black ones up in Maine? But you take one look at this thing, you're like, how can that possibly be the same species as the one in Missouri? So anyhow, as you drive from Maine to Missouri, check out those butterflies, and I'd love to know where that it's almost like the phase transition from one form of that butterfly to another happens. So
yeah, I can tell you down here in North Carolina where I live, it's the red-spotted purples. And I do hear the echo. I do hear the echo, Greg. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll keep. Yeah, it's a bad echo. Matthew Winthrop says Ted sounds fine. I don't know what is going on. There's some maybe it's coming out of your. I have no idea.
Or I could just do all the talking.
Echo. Yeah, you're welcome to. I hear it too. I don't know what the deal is. Greg, if you want to log into Caster and have a listen there, you'll be able to hear it then, and maybe you'll be able to solve it. Anyway, we'll just go ahead and move on. I apologize for the oddness of my voice. I don't know quite what to do about that, but we'll keep going on. Oh, what's this bird? We got a bird here. It's in Oklahoma. It's kind of a backlit image. I chose this because the lighting is so odd. The lighting is so odd here. Ted, what are your thoughts about this guy?
Okay. So, and let me also say, I'm going to go a little faster and less leisurely than I usually do. I do, in theory, have a kind of important meeting I need to get to in 31 minutes. I'll be kind of fast.
Oh, right on. Okay.
But we can go on a little bit later. I put them on notice that we can wait just a little bit. Yeah. So when I see, and sorry, let me pull up this image so I can see it too. And as usual, Nate just throws these at me with no other context. But so my mind goes immediately to flycatcher, and I should be clear, what are the New World flycatchers? It's a big-headed drab bird out in the open, perched upright. So that screams flycatcher. And then with the reddish in the tail, I'll get to that, and the wings, I'll get to that in a moment. That makes it the genus Myarchus. So that's a very, very tricky genus of birds in our area. When I say our area, I mean the ABA area. So
the neotropics. I mean, the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, but let's just limit it to Oklahoma, where it gets simpler. So there are only two Myarchus flycatchers in Oklahoma: the ash-throated and the great crested. So it's going to be one of these two. As you said, it's a sort of backlit photo. It's also a sort of distressed looking bird. It's either calling or maybe in gular flutter or something. But it comes down to ash-throated versus great crested. And I'd dearly love to know what part of Oklahoma we're in, but I don't seem to have.
I could probably find that, but I forgot.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. I still have a feeling for what this bird is. So my default Myarchus up in Colorado is ash-throated. And this just doesn't look like ash-throated to me. It's too big-headed, too much of a bruiser. It's got too much like reddish in the tail, although the tail's the tail's quite worn. The throat's not pale enough like an ash-throated. So I'm being all kind of subtle and subjective here, but like this just looks like a great crested flycatcher. I think in a less harsh light, it would be more colorful. If turned around, we'd see like the nice yellow belly. But this just looks like a great crested flycatcher, not an ash-throated flycatcher, but I'm not sure. But I lean pretty heavily great crested on this one.
I agree with you, Ted. Okay. And Yeah, I mean, just the light is not great, but I think it's enough that you can see kind of the darkness of the bird. Ashler flycatcher is just so much paler of a bird, just sort of
Yep,
generally.
I agree.
We get them every once in a while here
Mhm.
in the winter months. It's one of our most common kind of western vagrant flycatchers here in the southeast. But we have great crested flycatchers all throughout the summer. They're very loud and
Yeah, right.
quite common, and they're in my yard even. I can hear them out of my front door. They're yeah, but that's definitely what I go with this on this bird. I think a lot of the other, I think great crested of all the myarchus, at least the commonly occurring myarchus in the ABA area, has the most rufous in the wings and tail, and the fact that we can see it so well in this photo suggests that that's exactly what we're looking at.
Yeah, ash toad is a pretty slight, pale, petite myarchus, especially compared to
thinner waist, if
crested,
that makes any sense, which I guess is kind of the base of the tail, seems like.
Hey,
All right.
two quick comments just on nomenclature. So just a word from an editor. It's great space capital C crested flycatcher. One of the most common typos is great hyphen crested flycatcher, but it's the great crested flycatcher. Also, the genus name is so cool. Myarchus means Lord of the Flies. So
yeah,
that's the name. That's what the bird's genus means.
Ted, can you hear me when I do this? You can't hear me, right?
Oh,
no.
And Nate,
yeah, that's what I thought. Greg told me to mute myself in Zoom, but unfortunately I can't do that because
I lost you for a moment,
but
I got you back. You sound okay to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the next bird there, Greg. We've got kind of a I don't know if it's switched yet. I can't really tell. We've got kind of an underside view of what appears to be a very large bird.
Yep. So
there it is. There it is. Now it's coming through. There's a little bit of a lag too between what I'm watching and what I'm seeing, but because my audio is coming in so weird, I don't want to subject people to it. Ted, what were you thinking about this bird?
Right on. Okay, so you said it's a large bird. I concur. Again, just in the interest of time, I'll just say that my mind goes immediately towards something in the heron group. So the family Ardiidae. It's quite long-winged. It's quite streaky below. We can see the long legs dangling back. And I don't know what I think. Oh, so the bird's flying away from us. Let's just be clear about that. And I guess that's like the base of a orangish bill up front. Well, it could almost be a stick or something. So, and when I see a heron that's dark and heavily streaked below, my mind goes immediately to American bittern. And I think that would be within range in Alberta. But we have to be careful. There are some other streaked herons below, especially in their juvenile plumages, and a green heron and the night herons, black-crowned and yellow-crowned night heron come to mind. I don't think this is a night heron, which, by the way, there are many streaky night herons at this time of the year. Last year's juveniles are like out in full force, and they're very late in their second calendar year now. But night herons have very relatively short and very rounded wings. So I think this rules out a night heron, I think. And then you have to watch out for juvenile green heron. But as I kind of zoom in close here, I think I'm seeing those like dark streaks on the neck of a bittern. So it's nice and long winged like a bittern. So hey, I'd love to hear this bird or see it from a different angle or something, but American bittern is the best that I can come up with. So,
well, I chose this bird actually because when I was kind of scrolling through the What's This Bird feed, looking for anything sort of interesting. I thought it was one thing at first, and then when I kind of looked more closely, I thought it was something else.
Okay.
Because my first impulse was young green heron because of the
streaking. Yeah, and but keep in mind, I didn't totally rule out green heron, but yep, okay.
Yeah, so, I don't think it's a green heron though.
Okay. All right.
Because I think the wings look too long and thin, and I don't think that's just the angle in that. Green heron kind of has more kind of rounder wings, like a crow almost, a little bit.
Yep.
But this one kind of gives you a very. There are a few other photos that are in this that I think would suggest something different than maybe.
I see, and I don't have the luxury of knowing those, but okay.
So I didn't mean to set you up like that.
That's cool. That's good. It makes it fun.
But yeah, bittern was definitely a possibility.
Oh, wait. Oh, I know what this is. I changed my mind completely.
I know, exactly.
It's great blue heron, isn't it?
It's great blue heron.
Okay, yeah. It's funny. This completely comes in, and the bill's completely right. So it's a young. Oh, and by the way, there's a completely definitive field mark here. I'm sorry, I'm on a small laptop. I see it. It's those it's those rufous trousers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't see them very well, but you can see them.
So I completely see that. No, I'm going on a bigger screen. So, and I can't. You guys can't see my mouse, I guess. But yeah, so those the pantaloons or the trousers.
Yep.
They're bright rufous. So yeah, this is
For
and the
sure.
bill makes all the sense in the world now. So this is a young great blue heron, and I'm actually
Yeah.
confident of that
Yeah,
now.
it's pretty
Okay,
wild.
cool. All right.
That's why I chose this image. I was
Yep.
trying to fool you, Ted, or fool anybody. I think, I think one of the ways that people, even skilled birders, misidentify birds is by getting kind of unconventional looks
Yeah, yeah.
at certain birds, right?
But
And I've certainly made those mistakes. I'm
yep,
sure everyone has made those
yep.
mistakes. But
But no, those rufous trousers are
mhm,
like totally diagnostic
yeah, it's a little
for great
washed
blue.
out, the
Yep,
image as
and
well.
I'm seeing that now. Cool.
And
All right.
some notes. Evan Smith notes: no green herons in Alberta. Too far
Oh,
north.
well, that's good.
Good to
Yep.
know.
S&D is very
Yes,
important.
indeed.
Cool.
That's right. Yes. So great blue heron on that one. Greg, let's move on to the next one. This was a photo from California. I'm not exactly sure when it's going to pop up, but it will eventually. We'll just talk it as if it is. I still don't know. I don't know what the situation is with my voice. Actually, it sounds a lot better. I don't think I'm echoing anymore. That's good. So I can talk a little bit about this bird. Some interesting things to note of this bird. It's not just a great quality photo, but you can still see the birds in it. I think the habitat is a really useful thing to talk about here.
Yeah. So we seem to be on the beach, or we could be at the Great Salt Lake, but
or on like a reservoir.
yeah, but we're in California, and we seem
Yeah.
to be at the juxtaposition of rock and water. So the California coast certainly leaps to mind. But yeah, I suppose this could be somewhere on the Salton Sea, or sorry, Mona Lake, or somewhere like that. But actually, the birds themselves are utterly distinctive. I now, you never know with me and birds, but I think these are straightforward black oyster catchers. They look like blobs of bird with a very, very long and prominent bills and big honking pale feet.
Yes.
This is a very again, this photo is taken under very harsh lighting conditions. So this is a beautiful bird, and no diss on the photographer, but the light conditions are very harsh here.
Probably taken
That
with a
bill,
cell phone, I imagine.
that bill should be sort of a just brilliantly, sort of red orange, and the feet should be more sort of a yellowy color as well. But yeah, these are two black oyster catchers, two of our most stunning and our largest shorebirds. They occur only right on the immediate coast, the west coast of the ABA area, well up into Alaska, and then also. And here's where it gets tricky. Then, as you get down into Mexico, they encounter American oyster catchers coming up the Pacific side, and just to be, cover all my bases here, I can't prove that one of these isn't, 1/4 American and 3/4 black. That's a real bugaboo for California birding right now. But these look like normal, if you will, black oyster catchers. And since they seem so just normally black, I would guess that we're probably not in, say, San Diego or somewhere like that, where so many of the birds.
I think it's Northern California.
Yeah, right. And the farther north you get, the less likely there is to be introgression from American oyster catchers. So yeah, I'd say we've got two fairly straightforward black oyster catchers in a very sun-blasted habitat along the California coast.
Yeah, I would say that, you could call those hybrid black and American oyster catchers blackish oyster catcher. If blackish oyster catcher was not a bird that
that's right. Yeah, that's a Humboldt current bird. Yeah, so
oyster catcher.
Yeah, the blackish oyster catcher is. I hadn't thought about that, but that's sort of like coastal Peru.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's South American bird. Yeah,
cool.
And also, one of the things I always is, I live on the East Coast. American oyster catcher is our default oyster catcher. You can find them in sort of rocky groins and piers and things like that. Pretty much all up and down the East Coast. More common towards the southern end of that East Coast and the northern end. They are so loud too. I don't think I've ever been around oyster catchers when they weren't sort of screaming their heads off.
Yeah,
especially this time of year with chicks kind of following around.
I think black oyster catchers are maybe not quite as loud as I mean, a calling bird is loud, but they're just not as constantly vocal as American oyster catchers. For me, a very characteristic black oyster catcher scenario is, you're sort of walking the sea rocks, and some other birds are really conspicuous, like, surf birds or black turnstones, and obviously western gulls. I'm just trying to sort of, create the idea of being on the California coast, and then like, oh yeah, there's a black oyster catcher. Like, how did I miss that? So yeah, they can kind of fall silent for decent periods of time.
Wonder why that is. Wonder why black oyster catchers are more quiet than
they're just
American oyster
mellow, like Northern Californians.
There you go. We're all too intense over here on the East Coast.
All
right, Greg, let's move over to this one. I love this photo because I grabbed it and I am not really sure at all what this bird is. And Ted, we were talking before we got going. You're not exactly sure either. This is a weird one for sure.
So I'm just going to share with you a first impression. By the way, I have no
Yeah.
idea what this is. Like, I don't even know what order it's in. But so something that, so really, I'm at a loss on this one. It's patterned like a 3-wattled bellbird from Costa Rica and Panama, but that's not what it's going to be. I mean, this is another joke here, but it's patterned a little bit like although it's not this because of this structure, like a white-headed woodpecker, which it's not at all. It's actually it's patterned vaguely like a but not shaped like a swallow-tailed kite. So the point is, swallow-tailed kite, 3-wattled bellbird, white-headed woodpecker, 3 different orders of birds. I know that offhand it does not look like an Alabama expected species to me, unless I'm just really at a weird angle or my brain's not wide open enough.
Yeah.
I know that, again, especially in coastal Alabama, that weird Munias come to feeders, but this doesn't really look like that. What's that, white-headed Munia? Do I have that right? It's one of them. White-headed Munia, but it's not a white-headed Munia either.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a woodpecker, I think, pretty clearly, and probably Melanerpes woodpecker, which is sort of the middle-sized woodpeckers, kind of your classic.
Right. So I mean, the only Melanerpes,
redheaded.
redheaded also did sort of come to mind here, although there's absolutely no red on this bird's head.
Yeah.
At all. Redheads do sometimes visit feeders. But if it's a redheaded woodpecker, the red on the head and breast, that whole reddish cowl is expressing very oddly in this picture.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my first impression was red-headed woodpecker. I suppose, you're leaving aside the fact that it doesn't have a red head, doesn't have anything on the head. Like even a juvenile red-headed woodpecker would have.
Oh yeah, totally different. Yeah, very dusky. Yeah.
But remove the head. Like, don't look at the head. I'm totally fine calling this a red-headed woodpecker. I'm inclined to think that there's some sort of plumage abnormality going on. It's not something I've really heard of in red-headed woodpeckers. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with any sort of weird plumage abnormalities in Melanerpes woodpeckers aside from leucism, but to have leucism express itself in such a way that all the markings on the head would be pretty much completely absent is such a weird. But I know that stuff happens.
I can't believe
because you've never seen it doesn't mean that it can't happen.
You're resisting the urge to talk about leucistic pileated woodpeckers in the swamps of Ark, but never mind, we won't go there.
No,
but anyhow,
I get enough of that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the woodpecker shape is there, and as I was sort of joking my way through this, white-headed woodpecker, came to mind. It's not going to be that. Yeah, that's it used to be Picoides. Now it's.
No, maybe it's not. There's been a lot of woodpecker.
It's in whatever. It's dendro something. Yeah, it's whatever it's in the genus is hairy woodpecker. I could be wrong about that, but maybe I might be wrong. But I thought.
No, it's Leuconata pike. There have been a lot of woodpecker taxonomy changes.
But I don't think whiteheaded's ever been in Melanerpes.
Anyway.
So anyhow, I'm good with that as a. Well, actually, I'm not really good with it as a redheaded woodpecker, but I guess I'll I'll accept that as a.
Yeah, and Dave Irons notes another thing that I pointed out. It does have that white patch in the wings. Secondaries that does would suggest redheaded woodpecker. Even when it gets sort of muddy in the young birds,
sure,
you can still sort of see it. And he correctly also knows that whiteheaded would be all black below. Yeah, there would be more. So if it was a whiteheaded, it'd be way more leucism going on than it would be redheaded. Sure. I think it's redheaded most likely, but it's a weird one for sure. Yep. Shall we move on?
We shall move on.
I don't want to keep you too much.
It's good.
We're making time.
We're making time. I know. Look at that.
Yeah. You've red-bellied, Jared Fisher notes. I wouldn't be totally averse to that. Here's another California bird. Obviously more well inland. Interesting things to note on this one, Ted?
Yeah. So this one, unlike pretty much everything we've seen so far, except actually. I guess the great blue heron. This looks totally diagnostic to me. I'll blurt it out here and then sort of work us through it. So I'm nearly certain, although maybe I shouldn't be certain of anything, that these are Townsend solitaires. It looks like a juvenile on the branch and an adult coming in to feed it, or at least to hang out with it. But let's look at the bird that has its wings up, splayed out. So everything about that's perfect for Townsend solitaire. It's a grayish bird, flashing sort of that buffy in the wings. It's got nice white tail edges. And it's got a bit of a white eye ring. So eye-ring, the tail, the wings, the gray color overall. In fact, it's in a, oh gosh, what's in a coniferous woods here? I'm
Some
not,
sort of spruce.
Douglas fir. I don't know. Actually, I'm really not sure. I should be careful with that. But anyway, it looks like it's, it looks straightforward for Townsend solitaire. I'll point out that I think even that the presumptive juvenile, the bird on the branch, could probably be identified. It's got the it's very spotted, like thrushes are. It's got the eye ring. You can see some of that buff coming in on the wing, and the so even the very young thrushes typically have the flight feather marks that are the same as on the adult. So it seems to have those white outer tail feathers, and then the showing the buff patches in the wing. So it would have been tricky if you had photoshopped out the adult, because young bluebirds can really look like that.
Yeah, they look like
but
bluebirds.
I do think that the and they can have the eye ring, but I think that the tail and wing alone, like even on the juvenile bird, make it a Townsend solitaire. But the two of them together, doing their thing, to me all adds up very definitively to Townsend solitaire.
Yeah, Townsend solitaires in the turdid family with all the other thrushes, and sometimes we don't always think of them as thrushes just because they're shaped so oddly. Or birders might not think of them.
Yeah, they can look like flycatchers.
Yeah, exactly. They sort of act like flycatchers. I love that mark in the wing, that big wing stripe on the base of the flight feathers. Sort of apricot, almost peachy orange in the adults. I don't know if you've ever seen like a spread wing of like a Catharus thrush, like a
sure, yeah,
they've
have
got that mark there too.
Band.
It's really interesting. Yeah, it's a little more subdued and not something you always focus on, and certainly not one of the main field marks for those species. But it goes to show, all these kind of thrushes, even though their body shapes are a little bit different, they all sort of do similar things. I mean, there are aspects of Townsend solitaire that make you think of bluebirds, and aspects that make you think of Catharus thrushes, and those heavily spotted juvenile. That's a very thrush thing.
Yeah, they especially remind me of
robins I have hopping around in my yard. So yeah,
the bluebirds most of of all. Hey, one just comment I'll make, just sort of to be all ABA area inclusive here, is that the hotspot for solitaire diversity in our area is, of course, Hawaii. Extant and extinct solitaires there. So if you want to really appreciate the diversity of solitaires, go to the Hawaiian Islands, where you have multiple species.
Yeah, we have a lot of love for the juvenile plumage of Townsend solitaire in the comments.
Good.
Not something I get to see in the East, although we have had Townsend solitaire in North Carolina before.
Sure.
Funnily, it was actually this time of year that the very first record of Townsend solitaire showed up in North Carolina.
Wow, yeah, I would. To me,
very high. Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about Ashton the flycatcher in connection with North Carolina earlier. That's one of, along with Townsend solitaire, and actually a host of others. That's one of those birds I just think of as being sort of your basic kind of fall, winter, sort of late fall to early winter bird on the East Coast.
About those flycatchers and I guess fly catching birds like a Townsend solitaire.
Yep.
Push them east.
Oh, and fly catching, and of course berry eating. They are very, very partial to juniper berries.
Yeah, so I saw this Townsend solitaire. It was up at the very top of Grandfather Mountain, which is the second highest mountain in North Carolina. It's up about 6,000 feet, which is quite low to someone from Colorado, but for those in the East, it's very high. It was spruce fir habitat up there, and you're watching this Townsend solitaire, and there's things like red squirrel running around. It's one of the reliable places for red squirrel in the Southeast, and it's kind of very different sort of habitat, very Western sort of habitat.
So I'm curious, you said second highest peak in North Carolina. Would that then also be the second highest peak east of the Mississippi?
I think it would be. Yeah. Because Mount Mitchell is the highest peak east of the Mississippi.
But it's 66, 70 or something.
Yeah, the difference between them is like less than 100 feet. I think they're very similar. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next one, Greg. Thanks.
Okay.
Our last bird. We'll get you out before 2, Ted.
No, we're good. We can even have some time to chitter chatter.
This is a short. I apologize for the relatively short What's This Bird program this week. We had some technical issues that we are dealing with. We'll have those ironed out by the next time we come out. All right. So here's a photo of a bird from North Dakota. Looks awful lot like that solitaire, Ted.
Yeah. So one of the frequent misidentifications on Christmas counts in my part of the world is Townsend solitaire for western wood pewee. Every year, somebody reports a western wood pewee that definitely turns out to be a Townsend solitaire. So yeah, also sort of circling back to our first bird, this looks like a flycatcher. It's perched upright. It's out in the open. It's fairly drab and dull. I have a question, Nate, for you. This is definitely from like June. Like this is not possibly from like August of last year or something, right?
I'm pretty sure, and I can.
Okay.
I can.
Okay. Well, that's
it,
cool.
I'm pretty sure it was from recent.
So I mean, again, I'll just blurt out the answer. It looks like a juvenile eastern phoebe to me. But juvenile North Dakota juvenile phoebes in June. I think that's kind of getting that might. Well, of course they get back so early, so maybe the dews are out already. Yeah, that's right. It's a very early migrant. So the phoebe, the adult phoebe, is just an incredibly drab flycatcher. It's got no eye ring to speak of, as you can see here, and the adults have almost no wing bars to speak of. Now this bird has nice, bright, sort of buffy wing bars, which are a very good mark for the juvenile eastern phoebe. So I'm guessing this is just an early fledged eastern phoebe. Nice, really crisp juvenile feathers everywhere, and it's got those nice buff wing bars. And if we were in real life, this bird would be dipping its tail and saying chip very brightly, just like eastern phoebes do. So possible ID contenders, you know, Eastern kingbird can actually be sort of patterned like Eastern phoebe, but a kingbird would have, of course, the white tail band and would just be darker overall above. But some Eastern kingbird juveniles are pretty similar to this bird. But I'm going to go, also, they would be more crested. This is a very flat-headed bird, but I'm going to go Eastern phoebe, and I'm going to call it a juvenile. And I'm going to say I'm a bit surprised it's this far along in the month of June in North Dakota, but Eastern phoebes get back early. So.
That is my impression as well. I grabbed this photo because I really liked the way. I mean, there's some kind of weird things going on. One, it's a juvenile bird, and that far north, that's notable. I thought that the color is a little bit. The photo is a little bit overexposed, and so it kind of gives the impression that the underside is maybe a little more, I don't know, pinkish than maybe it would be. But they are, Eastern phoebes, especially young birds, do have quite a bit of a yellow wash.
Oh, totally. I don't know
right. If we're really seeing that, or if it's or if the photo is overexposed here, but it's there's something going on there.
Yep.
And the angle is kind of weird. The bird is facing away from us. We're definitely not seeing the kind of classic phoebe profile. It goes to show that identifying birds from photos can be a lot more difficult than identifying birds in the field, because as you know, Ted, if we saw this bird anywhere in the eastern 2/3 of the continent, it would be very obvious that it's an eastern phoebe because of its behavior, the kind of bobbing its tail, the constant kind of chirping, that sort of stuff makes the eastern phoebe stand out immediately without even seeing the plumage.
Sure.
But this is a those wing bars. We don't often think of phoebes having wing bars, but the young birds do have those kind of buffy wing bars that make them look almost a bit more like ampid flycatchers or peewees or any of the other kind of whereas the adult birds don't really have those. And so it's good to note. People will probably be seeing a lot of these birds in the next few months as phoebes are fledging.
Sure, and kingbirds too can show really prominent wing bars when they're younger. Cool.
Yeah, Dave Irons also notes that pointed tail feathers help age this bird.
Yeah, right. So it's very pointy, like a juvenile.
Yeah. All right, that's our last bird. Can we go back to the two-top, Greg? And we can take any sort of questions. We've got a little bit of time here.
Sure. I'm good.
If anyone wants to comment about birds they're seeing. Ted, I want to ask your opinion about probably the most exciting bird in the ABA area these days. What's your take on that southern lapwing?
Oh, right, the southern lapwing in Michigan. So I don't know how much of the internal conversation you were following, but I chimed in with this remark this morning. So people were just saying lapwing. They were saying lapwing. And actually, because the more expected lapwing in the ABA area is northern lapwing, my first reaction was, well, that doesn't add up at all. Lapwing should not be in Michigan in I guess late June.
Would you expect a northern lapwing or a southern lapwing in Michigan? That's a good question.
Well, that's my, and especially when we're putting it in summer. So, but when people were saying, when I finally realized it was a southern lapwing because I saw the photo. So southern lapwing is a bird that about 15 years ago was really starting to show up in the ABA area. I mean, records. I remember one in particular from Maryland, but I mean, there were
There's one in
scattered
Florida as
records.
well.
Yeah,
Panhandle. Yeah.
and elsewhere. And it seemed to. Oh, and by the way, I should say the southern lapwing is a bird that is rapidly expanding north from its South American range. So I and others were thinking it was going to be sort of inevitable that there would be southern lapwings in the ABA area by, let's say, the year 2022,
Yeah.
and then the whole lapwing phenomenon sort of just stalled out completely. And then this bird showed up. As you already know, I tend to be a believer when it comes to vagrancy, and also I tend to sort of, this is just me editorializing. I'm generally okay with, if you will, assists. So birds on a ship for a little while, or a bird at a feeder or something like that. So it's an intriguing bird, and this is sort of, I'm going philosophical on you, but if it really did somehow survive a cargo ship, ride from cargo plane ride from I don't know, Brasilia or somewhere, like that's almost more amazing than if it just made the short distance hop from middle America up to Michigan. I mean, tropical hummingbirds have made it up to Michigan, and yeah, so it's a cool bird. I tend to be, as I said, sort of a believer in cases like this, but pretty amazing that there's a southern lapwing in Michigan, and whether it flew here on its own or somehow survived the ride on a cargo plane is pretty impressive either way.
I think the discussion that points out that airport tarmac is an absolutely totally believable habitat for southern lapwing is a good way. I got my life for southern lapwing on the airport tarmac in Bogota. So
yeah,
I'm not alone in getting life for southern lapwing on an airport tarmac in some.
Yeah, some of those sort of really colorful, lapwing and lapwing-like birds, whether they're in Africa and Asia or in South America, they really are birds of very built-up areas, even more so than killdeer. I mean, killdeer often will certainly be seen on pavement, but yeah, some of the lapwings I've seen in Africa, India, they're, it's like I can't think of sightings that weren't, on or near pavement. So anyway, it's a cool bird. The question of provenance is, it gets kind of theological after a while, but it's neat that it's there, and as to however it got there, it's a pretty cool story.
For sure. Yeah, I don't want to put the ABA's thumb on any sort of scale, but I do think that there's a lot going for it to suggest that it might be a natural vagrant. I think it's noteworthy that it's on the coast of Lake Huron, right?
Oh, so and I didn't catch that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so this airfield is really the only big open space along the Lake Huron shoreline in that area that is, more or less completely forested. So if you're imagining a bird that is flying up, from Central America, and it reaches the first, massive body of water that it can't see the other side of, it's going to look around for habitat. And the only place that it could really find that suits the southern lapwing would be that airport tarmac.
That's
which
cool.
is,
yeah.
I mean, there's some interesting stuff that's going on, and it seems, at least as you say, as plausible as a bird getting on an airplane and not being noticed for however many hours.
Yeah. No, and I'm always a fan of just simply getting out there and documenting things like that. Sure. And this is going to sound a little bit like a cop out, but you can sort of leave it to others to worry about how it got there, but just simply documenting the presence of the bird. And also, I mean, some very basic information. I have not looked into this at all. I've barely looked at the images at all. And as I said, I thought it was a different lapwing altogether. But I mean, what do its feathers look like? I mean, that can often indicate long distance flight, or depending on where in the South America came from, or if he came from South America. I don't know the answers to these questions. When and how much it is molted can make a big deal as well. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting bird and an interesting discussion for sure. We have a couple questions that I'll note in the comment section before we say goodbye.
Yep.
Here's appropriately a Michigan question.
Cool.
Josette Shindak notes that she lives in Michigan. There are many spring birding events, biggest weekend birding being one of them, although that's not Michigan, but nearby.
Nearby, sure.
You don't hear as much about fall migration. Why is that?
Boy, it's funny. You talk about East Coast bias, West Coast bias, and so, yeah, it's kind of like fall migration bias, spring migration bias.
There's a bias there.
I don't know. I mean, it's simplistic for me to say that birds in spring are more colorful and easier to identify and more musical. All those things are true of the spring migration. Sorry about this. It's just that Interesting. I have to say I just hung up on Bill Pranty. No. But Bill Pranty's but Bill is very, very, very relevant to southern lapwings.
That's
I almost
true.
wonder if he was
That's
like,
true.
I was actually going to almost drop his name. He and I have talked a lot. We've talked a lot about southern lapwing vagrancy.
Put it right up to the mic.
Yeah, I know. But anyhow, so anyhow, Bill, if you're like complaining about southern lapwings, we'll take it up later. Anyhow, yeah, migration. I do think that's maybe spring migration gets sort of all the attention because we're dealing with very bright, beautiful, singing birds that are easy to identify. Fall migration involves vastly more birds, though, because all the juveniles.
Yep.
Oh, now he's calling me. Bill really wants to talk to me. Hang on a second. But anyhow, sorry, Bill. I probably made some horrible blunder about the southern lapwing, and he's like calling to to call me out on this. But yeah, the fall migration is fascinating. You have all these young birds involved, and then also I'm going to go East Coast on you all here. Oh, Craig, he really wants to talk to me. But the whole thing about the night flights of birds in the fall, with the birds sort of screaming their heads off and giving those flight calls. It's in general a much more stirring phenomenon in the fall. So anyhow, the fall migration is very, very much worth taking note of. And given that today is July 1st, the first of the fall migrants, shorebirds and some molt migrant passerines here in the West. It's right around the corner.
I love fall migration. I actually prefer fall migration to spring because here I am in the Southeast. Our spring migration feels like it goes so fast, right? So in some years, we'll be lucky if we get like maybe 2 or 3 really good days of spring migration, because if the weather is nice and there's south winds, the birds just blow right past us. Whereas in the fall, it's a little more leisurely. The birds are taking their time. The migration itself lasts like much 5 months. And as you say, there are way more birds.
Yeah. Also,
so you're running into birds more frequently.
In the east, and especially the farther north you go, you're also the beneficiary of that what we call the elliptical migration, with the whole phenomenon of migration being sort of shifted eastward in the fall. And I don't think you pick up that as much in the southeast as in the northeast, but some of the birds that are really quite scarce in spring are much easier to find because the whole migration is shifted eastward.
Yeah, rufous hummingbird being sort of a classic example.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming up on 2:00. You've clearly got a angry Bill Pranty to talk to, Ted.
I guess I do, or at least an excited Bill Pranty or something. But I'm not sure what's up, Bill. It'll be funny if it's about southern lapwing. I sort of doubt it, but anyhow. So
anyway, we'll call it wraps for today. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with either Ted or Greg, or some combination of Ted, Greg, or me. Maybe one of these days we'll do all 3 of us.
That'd be a free for all. A 3 for all now.
Yeah. And otherwise, we'll say have a great summer. Go out and look for those first migrating shorebirds that should be moving through your area. And we will see you next time. Oh, I will point out, if you enjoy what we do, please consider joining the ABA. Up there above Ted, there's an email address, URL aba.org/join. You help support the stuff that we're doing here, and also you'll also be added to the ABA's newsletter, weekly newsletter, flight calls, and we will put out on notice of these sort of events a day or 2 before they actually happen. So if you're afraid you're going to miss them, that's a good way to get it. You can actually get on flight calls. You don't have to be a member to be on flight calls, but it is part of membership. So I will say goodbye to everybody who's watching. I will say goodbye to you, Ted. I'll see you on Slack, and have a great summer, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Okay. And Nate, I'm going to take off.